Mary Beth Briggs never imagined her own father would drag her onto an auction block in the middle of town square, her pregnant belly exposed to the winter cold, while strangers bid on her like livestock. But when a silent mountain man stepped forward with $5 gold, everyone whispered he was a murderer. What happened next in that isolated cabin would shock the entire territory. Before we reveal this incredible story, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling us what city you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. The rope cut into Mary Beth's wrists. Her father yanked her forward through snow-packed streets, and she stumbled, her swollen belly throwing off her balance. "Keep moving." Harlan Briggs reeked of whiskey. 9 in the morning and already drunk. "You wanted to sin, time to pay for it." Mary Beth kept her head down, but townspeople were already gathering. Mrs. Henderson clutched her shawl and turned away. The butcher's boy pointed and laughed. Sheriff Morrison leaned against the general store, arms crossed, doing nothing. "Please, Papa." Her voice cracked. "Don't do this. I can work." "Work," Harlan spat. "You can't keep your legs closed, and you think anyone's hiring you now, looking like that?" He gestured at her body, her round face, her thick arms, her pregnant stomach. "You're a burden, a disgrace." The town square opened before them. Someone had set up the wooden block, the same one for horse auctions and bankruptcy sales. Harlan dragged her onto it. Mary Beth stumbled. The rough wood bit into her bare feet. She'd lost a shoe 2 blocks back. "Gentlemen, ladies," Harlan's voice boomed. "I got a problem needs solving. Get on with it, Briggs. What are you selling this time?" Harlan smiled like a snake. "My daughter." 3 seconds of silence. Then murmuring rolled through the crowd like thunder. "That's right." Harlan circled the block. Mary Beth here decided she was too good for decent folk. Decided she'd lay with a traveling man, get herself knocked up without marriage. She's learned her lesson now, haven't you, girl? Mary Beth's throat closed. She couldn't answer. Can't even speak. Harlan laughed, and men in the crowd laughed with him. But she cooks decent, and she's strong when she works. Hell, whoever takes her gets 2 for the price of 1, don't he? He patted her belly. Mary Beth flinched so hard she nearly fell. You can't sell a person, Harlan. Pastor Williams pushed through the crowd. This is 1876. I ain't selling her like property, Pastor. Harlan pulled papers from his coat. I'm arranging a marriage, finding her a husband since she can't manage herself. All legal. Any man who pays gets a signed marriage certificate and full rights to the child. This is barbaric. This is justice. Harlan's eyes gleamed. She shamed my house, my name. You think any decent man wants her now? At least this way she gets a roof and the baby gets a name. The baby kicked. Mary Beth placed a protective hand over her stomach. Let's start at $10 gold. Silence. Come on, gentlemen. More silence. Men studied their boots. $5 then. Desperation crept into Harlan's voice. $5 and she's yours. I'll give you 2 just to shut up, someone yelled. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Mary Beth closed her eyes. This was worse than the morning sickness that had revealed her secret. Worse than her father's rage. Worse than watching the preacher, the real father, ride out of town, leaving her with nothing but lies about love and God's plan. Going once for $5, Harlan shouted. Going twice. I'll pay it. The voice came from the livery stable's shadow. Deep. Quiet. But it carried over the entire crowd. Everyone turned. A man stepped into the light. Massive, 6.5 feet tall, shoulders broad as an ox yoke. Black beard, storm gray eyes, buckskin and fur. He moved with the careful silence of a predator. Jonas roar. Women gasped. Men stepped back. Sheriff Morrison's hand moved toward his gun. Jesus Christ, someone whispered. The mountain man. The one who killed his wife. Murderer. Should have been hanged. Jonas ignored them. He walked straight to the block boots, crunching snow breath cloud in the cold air. He stopped and looked up at Mary Beth. For the first time in hours, someone looked at her like she was human. His eyes held no disgust, no mockery, just deep, weary sadness that matched her own. You got $5, Roar. Harlan's voice shook. Jonas reached into his coat. He counted out 5 gold coins one by one. Each clinked onto the wood beside Mary Beth's bare foot. There. Hold on. Sheriff Morrison stepped forward. Jonas, there's still questions about what happened on that mountain. You think folks will just let you take another woman up there? Jonas turned. His voice stayed perfectly calm. You ever charge me with a crime, Morrison? Well, no, but you find any evidence I did wrong? The Ute Scouts said a blizzard buried half the mountain. Said they found tracks showing I tried to dig through 8 feet of snow with my bare hands to reach the cave where my wife sheltered. Said, when they found me 3 days later, my fingers were bloody to the bone, and I was still digging. Jonas's voice never rose, but something in it made Morrison step back. That what you call murder? Morrison had no answer. Jonas turned to Harlan. Money's there. Papers. Harlan snatched the coins, counted twice, then thrust the marriage certificate at Jonas. She's your problem now. Good luck she eats like a horse and complains twice as much. Mary Beth felt the words like fists, but she was beyond tears. Jonas took the papers, folded them, carefully tucked them in his coat. Then he stepped onto the block and lifted Mary Beth's bare foot. He pulled off one of his own boots, warm, lined with rabbit fur, and slid it onto her foot. It swallowed her foot whole, but it was warm. Can you walk? Mary Beth nodded, not trusting her voice. Come on down. Slow. I'll catch you if you slip. She took his hand, rough, calloused, strong, and let him help her down. Her legs nearly gave out. She hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. Jonas caught her elbow. Easy. Where you taking her, Roar? Home. Then, louder to everyone, anyone got a problem, take it up with Judge Dinger next circuit. I got legal papers. She's my wife now. That means she's under my protection. The way he said protection made his meaning clear. You're making a mistake, mountain man, Harlan called counting coins. She ain't nothing but trouble. Jonas didn't respond. He guided Mary Beth through the crowd, which parted like water. She kept her head down, hearing whispers. Did you see her face? He's gonna kill her like the last one. Someone should stop this. But no one did. Jonas led her to a massive draft horse already packed with supplies. He helped her up with surprising gentleness, then swung up behind her. His arm came around her waist, steadying her as the horse moved. They rode out. Mary Beth looked back once. Her father stood in the square counting coins. He didn't look up, didn't watch her leave, just counted his money like she'd never existed. The trail climbed into the mountains. Pine trees closed in heavy with snow. The sounds of civilization faded. An hour in, Mary Beth finally spoke. Everyone says you killed your wife. Jonas was quiet for a long moment. My wife's name was Sarah. Sarah Two Elk, Shoshone. I loved her from the first moment I saw her. His voice roughened. She was pregnant when she died. Mary Beth waited. Freak blizzard came through last November. I was checking trap lines. Sarah was gathering wood. Storm hit so fast, 1 minute clear sky, next minute whiteout. She ran for a cave 1/4 mile from the cabin. Smart thinking. That cave saved my life before. He paused. But there was a slide. Half the mountain came down, sealed the cave shut. His voice dropped. I dug for 3 days straight. The Ute scouts found me half dead still digging. My fingers. He held up scarred hands. They wanted to take them. Said they were too damaged. I wouldn't let them. I'm sorry. Town thinks I killed her. Made up the blizzard story. The Ute scouts told the sheriff the truth, Henry. 2 elk. Sarah's cousin gave sworn testimony. But white folks don't trust Indian witnesses. So I've been guilty without trial for 2 years. Then why come back to town? Needed supplies. Winter's coming hard. He gestured at the packs. But when I saw you on that block, he shook his head. Sarah was heavy with child when she died. Standing in the cold, afraid alone. I saw you in the same situation and I couldn't. He trailed off. No one should be sold like cattle. Not by their own blood. Something in Mary Beth's chest loosened. They rode in silence for another hour. The horse suddenly stopped, ears pricked forward. What is it? Mary Beth whispered. Jonas's arm tightened around her. Wolf tracks. Fresh. She scanned the trees but saw nothing. They're watching, Jonas said quietly. Been following us for the last mile. Are we in danger? Not yet. They're just curious. He clicked his tongue and the horse moved forward. But we need to reach the cabin before dark. Wolves are bolder at night. The trail grew steeper. Mary Beth's back ached. Her stomach cramped. She hadn't realized how exhausted she was until now. Almost there, Jonas said, as if sensing her discomfort. 20 minutes later, they emerged into a clearing. A log cabin stood in the center, smoke rising from its stone chimney. A lean-to stable sat to one side. A small stream ran through the clearing. Jonas dismounted and helped her down. Her legs buckled. He caught her again. Long ride when you're not used to it. You'll be unsteady a while. He led her toward the cabin door, then circled back for the horse. Mary Beth stood there unsure. Part of her wanted to run, but run where the door opened. Jonas stood there, having somehow come through a back entrance. Come in. It's warm. Mary Beth hesitated. I'm not gonna hurt you. His voice was gentle. You got no reason to believe that, but it's true. She believed him, or maybe she was too tired to care. She stepped inside. The cabin was simple but clean. Large stone fireplace with crackling flames. Table with 2 chairs. Counter with wash basin. Shelves lined with supplies. In the corner, a large bed covered with furs. Mary Beth's eyes fixed on the bed. Fear flooded through exhaustion. Jonas noticed immediately. That's your bed, he gestured at it. I sleep there. He pointed to a smaller pallet near the fireplace. Been sleeping there since Sarah passed. Can't seem to use the big bed anymore. The raw honesty made Mary Beth's fear ease slightly. Why did you really buy me? The words escaped before she could stop them. Jonas moved to the fireplace, added a log he didn't need. When he spoke, he didn't look at her. I couldn't save Sarah. Couldn't dig fast enough. Couldn't get to her in time. His hands trembled. But when I saw you on that block, saw your father treating you like livestock, saw that crowd laughing. He turned to face her. Maybe I can't bring Sarah back, but I could stop what was happening to you. Had to mean something. So you bought me to save me. I bought you to give you a choice." He met her eyes. "Stay here as long as you need. When the baby comes, I'll help however I can. When spring thaws the passes, if you want to leave, I'll take you anywhere you want. No obligations, no," he emphasized the next words, "nothing you don't want." His meaning was clear. "You mean you won't?" She couldn't finish. "I won't touch you unless you ask me to, and I can't imagine why you would. So that's that." For the first time in months, Mary Beth felt safe. "I can work, cook, clean, mend. I won't be a burden." "Hey," his voice was firm but gentle, "you're 7 months pregnant and you survived being sold by your own father. Tonight you rest. Tomorrow we figure out everything else." He moved to the shelves, pulled down a pot of stew, hung it over the fire. The smell hit Mary Beth like a wave. "When did you last eat?" "Yesterday morning." He cursed under his breath. "That bastard." "I've heard worse today." Jonas laughed, a short, rusty surprised. He ladled stew into a bowl, brought it to her. "Eat slow. Your stomach'll rebel if you go too fast." The stew was simple: venison, potatoes, carrots, onions, but it tasted like heaven. Mary Beth forced herself to eat slowly. Jonas busied himself unpacking, checking the fire, securing the cabin. Every movement purposeful, efficient. The actions of someone who'd lived alone too long. "Can I ask something?" Mary Beth said between bites. "Sure." "What was she like, Sarah?" Jonas paused, then smiled just slightly but genuine. "Fierce. Barely came up to my chest, but fierce as a wolverine. Argued with me about everything. Trap placement, hide, cure, and weather reading. She was usually right, which annoyed me." The smile widened. "She sang constantly. Shoshone, songs I didn't understand. Beautiful songs. And her laugh," he stopped. "Her laugh could light up the darkest day. She sounds wonderful. She was," he looked at Mary Beth directly, "and she would have fought your father tooth and nail if she'd seen what he did today. Sarah didn't tolerate injustice." Mary Beth finished her stew. Warmth and food made her desperately sleepy. "Go on out of bed," Jonas said. "Fresh linens, extra blankets if you need them. What about you? I'll bank the fire and bed down after." Mary Beth stood carefully, every muscle aching. She made her way to the bed and sat on its edge. The mattress was soft, the furs thick and warm. "Jonas." He turned from the fire. "Yeah, thank you for everything today." "Don't thank me yet. Winter's long up here. It'll get harder before it gets easier." "Still, thank you." He nodded once. Mary Beth lay down, pulling furs over her. The bed smelled like pine and fresh air. Through the window, stars appeared in the darkening sky. The baby kicked. She placed her hand over her stomach. "We're safe now," she whispered, "at least for tonight." Outside, wind rose. A storm approached. But inside, the fire crackled warm, and Mary Beth fell into deep, dreamless sleep. She didn't see Jonas standing by the fire watching her with profound sadness. Didn't see him touch the wedding band on his left hand, braided sweetgrass and silver wire that Sarah had made. Didn't hear him whisper, "I couldn't save you, Sarah, but maybe I can save her. Maybe that counts for something." The storm hit an hour later, howling around the cabin. But the walls held. The fire burned. Inside, two broken people rested under the same roof, neither believing yet that mercy could exist in a world as cruel as theirs had been. In town, Harlan bought drinks with his $5 telling anyone who'd listen he'd finally gotten rid of his burden. No one mentioned the blood money. No one mentioned he'd sold his daughter. They just drank his whiskey and laughed and pretended what happened was acceptable. But on the mountain, in a cabin surrounded by snow and silence, a different story was beginning. One that would shake Silverton before winter's end. One that would prove mercy sometimes comes from unexpected places. That the people society calls monsters are sometimes more human than those who cast the stones. The fire burned low. The storm raged. In the morning, when Mary Beth woke to find Jonas already making breakfast, treating her with the same careful respect, she would begin to understand something important. She hadn't been bought. She'd been rescued. And that would change everything. Mary Beth woke to the sound of an axe splitting wood. For a confused moment, she didn't know where she was. Then memory flooded back the auction block, the mountain man, the cabin. She sat up slowly, her body stiff and sore from yesterday's ordeal. Pale morning light filtered through the window. The fire still crackled in the hearth, and something was cooking. The smell of cornbread and bacon filled the cabin. Jonas stood at the counter, his back to her, working efficiently. He must have heard her move because he spoke without turning. "Coffee's ready if you want some. Breakfast in about 10 minutes. Mary Beth pushed the furs aside and stood carefully. Her feet touched the cold floor and she winced. "There's socks in that trunk by the bed," Jonas said, still not looking at her. "Take what you need." She opened the trunk and found thick wool socks neatly folded. They were enormous, clearly Jonas's, but they were warm. She pulled on 2 pairs. Jonas finally turned around holding 2 tin cups of coffee. He handed her one and their fingers brushed. He pulled back quickly like he'd touched fire. "Sleep okay?" "Better than I have in months." Mary Beth wrapped her hands around the cup, letting the warmth seep into her fingers. "What time is it?" "About 7. Sun's been up an hour." He moved back to the stove, flipped something in a cast-iron pan. Storm passed in the night, left about 6 inches of fresh snow. Mary Beth moved to the window. The clearing was transformed, everything buried under pristine white. The stream was just visible, a dark ribbon cutting through the brightness. Beyond the clearing, pine trees stood like sentinels. "It's beautiful. It's deadly if you don't respect it." Jonas's tone wasn't harsh, just matter-of-fact. "That beauty'll kill you quick if you wander off unprepared. Temperature drops 20 degrees after sunset. Wolves hunt in packs of 6 or more. And if you get turned around in the trees, you'll freeze before you find your way back." He plated food, cornbread, bacon, scrambled eggs, and brought it to the table. Mary Beth sat down, suddenly ravenous, despite the large meal last night. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Mary Beth kept sneaking glances at Jonas. In daylight, he looked different. Still massive, still intimidating, but there was something gentle in the way he moved. Careful. Like he was constantly aware of his own strength and trying not to use it. "I need to check the trap line today," Jonas said, finally. "Takes about 4 hours. I'll bank the fire before I go, but you'll need to add a log every hour or so. Can you do that?" "Yes." "Don't go outside unless you absolutely have to. If you do, stay within sight of the cabin. The outhouse is about 30 yards that direction." He pointed. "There's a rope strung from the cabin door to the outhouse door. Always hold the rope. Always." "I understand." Jonas stood and started gathering supplies, a rifle, a hunting knife rope, various tools Mary Beth didn't recognize. He moved with practiced efficiency, checking and rechecking everything. "Jonas," he paused. "What do I do if something happens, if you don't come back?" He looked at her directly. "I'll come back. But if something did happen, if I'm not back by dark, you stay inside. Bar the door. Don't come looking for me." "Henry. 2 Elk comes by about once a month to check on me. He'll find you eventually." "Who's Henry 2 Elk?" "Sarah's cousin. Ute scout. Good man. Best tracker I ever met." Jonas pulled on a heavy fur coat. "He's the one who found me after Sarah died. Probably saved my life. You trust him? With my life? With yours too, if it came to that." Jonas picked up his rifle. "But it won't come to that. I'll be back by mid-afternoon." He opened the door. Cold air rushed in, making Mary Beth shiver despite the fire. Mary Beth. Jonas stood in the doorway, not looking at her. "You did good yesterday, coming up here not falling apart. That took courage." Before she could respond, he was gone, the door closing firmly behind him. Mary Beth sat at the table, coffee cup cooling in her hands, and tried to process everything. 24 hours ago, she'd been standing on an auction block being sold by her own father. Now, she was sitting in a mountain cabin alone while a man everyone called a murderer checked his trap lines. It didn't make sense. None of it made sense. She stood and began exploring the cabin properly. It was small, maybe 15 feet by 20 feet, but well organized. The shelves held supplies: flour, cornmeal, dried beans, salt, sugar, coffee. Jars of preserved vegetables. Smoked meat hanging from the rafters, enough food for months. Tools lined one wall: axes, saws, hammers, chisels, everything clean and well maintained. In the corner, near the bed, she found something that made her breath catch. A small wooden cradle, beautifully carved with intricate patterns. Shoshone designs, she thought, though she didn't know much about such things. She ran her fingers over the smooth wood. Jonas had made this, for Sarah's baby, for the child who never came. Mary Beth sat down on the bed, one hand on her own swollen belly. The baby kicked as if responding to her thoughts. "What are we doing here?" she whispered to the child inside her. "What kind of life is this gonna be?" But even as she asked the question, she knew the answer. This life, uncertain and strange as it was better than what waited in Silverton. Better than her father's house. Better than being married off to whoever had $5 to spare. She stood and got to work. If she was going to stay here, even temporarily, she'd pull her weight. She washed the breakfast dishes in the basin-heated water over the fire, dried everything carefully and put it away. She swept the floor, added a log to the fire exactly like Jonas had shown her. Then she found cloth and 3 thread in a basket near the bed and began mending. Jonas's shirts all had small tears from brambles and branches. His socks had holes. She worked steadily, falling into the rhythm of needle and thread, letting her mind quiet. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, then started its descent. Mary Beth's back ached from sitting, but she kept working. It felt good to be useful, to have purpose. The door opened suddenly, bringing in cold air and Jonas. He looked surprised to see her sewing. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to." Mary Beth held up the shirt she'd just finished. "You saved my life yesterday. Least I can do is mend your clothes." Something flickered across Jonas's face, surprise maybe, or gratitude. He shrugged off his coat and hung it by the door. "Trap line's good. Got 2 rabbits and a marten. We'll eat well tonight." He brought in the game and began the process of skinning and cleaning. Mary Beth had grown up on a farm. She knew this work. Without being asked, she heated water and brought him clean rags. They worked in comfortable silence, Jonas preparing the meat while Mary Beth continued her mending. The cabin filled with the quiet sounds of domestic life, the crackle of fire, the scrape of knife on wood, the whisper of thread through fabric. "Your father teach you to sew like that?" Jonas asked eventually. "My mother?" Mary Beth's voice went soft. "She died 6 months ago. Fever took her in 3 days. I'm sorry." She was the only person who... Mary Beth stopped, swallowed hard. "My father was different when she was alive, drank less, yelled less. After she died, he just got mean." Jonas nodded slowly. "Grief does strange things to people. Makes some of us better, makes others worse. Which did it make you?" He was quiet for a long moment, hands still working. "Honestly, both. I was angry for a long time after Sarah died. Angry at God, at the mountain, at myself for not being there. Wanted to burn the whole world down." He rinsed his hands in the basin. "But then I realized anger was just another way of holding on. And I needed to let go." "Did you let go?" "Some days." Jonas met her eyes. "Some days I still wake up expecting to hear her singing, still reach for her in the night. But it gets easier. Or maybe I just get used to the pain. Hard to tell the difference sometimes." Mary Beth understood that more than she wanted to admit. She'd spent months trying to let go of the preacher who'd gotten her pregnant. The man who'd whispered promises and scripture in equal measure. Who'd made her believe she was special, chosen, loved by God himself. "The baby's father," she said suddenly, not sure why she was telling Jonas this. "He was a traveling preacher. Came through Silverton last spring, held revivals for 3 weeks." Jonas kept working, but she could tell he was listening. "He said God had shown him I was meant to be his wife, that we were destined." She laughed bitterly. "I believed him, every word. He was so convincing, so sure, and I was lonely after Mama died. What happened? I told him I was pregnant. He said he needed to pray about it, seek God's guidance. Next morning he was gone. Left before sunrise, didn't tell anyone he was leaving." Mary Beth's hands stilled on the fabric. "I went to his room at the boarding house. He'd left a note. Said God had called him to missionary work in California. Said our moment of weakness was forgiven, but he couldn't let it derail God's plan for his life." Son of a bitch. The venom in Jonas's voice surprised her. "Sorry," he said quickly. "But men like that, they wear God's words like armor to hide their rot. Use scripture to justify whatever they want to do. Your preacher ain't the first and won't be the last to seduce a woman with religion, then disappear when consequences come calling. My father said it was my fault, said I tempted him, that I was..." She couldn't finish. "Your father's wrong." Jonas's voice was flat, certain. "Man came to town preaching salvation and left a pregnant woman behind. That's on him, not you. Don't let anyone tell you different." Mary Beth felt something loosen in her chest. Something that had been wound tight since the day she'd realized the preacher wasn't coming back. "Thank you," she whispered. Jonas just nodded and went back to his work. They spent the evening preparing dinner together. Jonas showed her where everything was stored, how he liked things organized. Mary Beth noticed he was teaching her not in an obvious way, but making sure she knew how to manage if she needed to. After dinner, they sat by the fire. Jonas pulled out a piece of wood and a knife and began carving. Mary Beth watched his hands, scarred, strong, surprisingly graceful. "What are you making?" "Spoon. Lost one down the well last week." She watched him work for a while, then said, "Tell me about Sarah, if you want to." Jonas's hands paused, then continued, "What do you want to know? How'd you meet?" A small smile touched his lips. "I was trapping up north near Shoshone territory. Got caught in a spring storm, ended up with a broken leg and no shelter. Would have died if Sarah and her brother hadn't found me." He shook his head at the memory. "She was furious that I was on their land. Told me I was an idiot for traveling alone during storm season. Yelled at me in Shoshone for about 10 minutes straight while she set my leg. Love at first sight. More like irritation at first sight." Jonas laughed softly, "But her brother convinced her to let me recover in their camp. 6 weeks I stayed there, and every day she'd come check my leg and tell me everything I was doing wrong. How I was eating wrong, breathing wrong, healing wrong. She sounds difficult. She was impossible." His smile widened. "And I loved every minute of it. By the time my leg healed, I knew I wasn't leaving without her." "Did her family approve?" "Her brother did. Her father took some convincing." Jonas's knife moved steadily, shaping the wood. "But Sarah told him she was coming with me whether he blessed it or not. She had a will like iron." "How long were you married?" 3 years, best 3 years of my life." The smile faded. "She got pregnant that last summer. We were so happy. Made plans, built the cradle, picked out names. Then winter came early and..." He trailed off. Mary Beth let the silence sit for a moment, then asked, "What were you going to name the baby?" Jonas looked up, surprised. "We picked out 2 names. David, if it was a boy, after her grandfather. Hope, if it was a girl." "Hope. That's beautiful." "Sarah chose it. Said every child born in this harsh world is an act of hope." His voice roughened. "Guess she was right about that." The fire crackled. Outside, an owl hooted in the darkness. "Jonas," Mary Beth said softly, "what happens when spring comes, when the passes thaw? What do you want to happen?" "I don't know." She placed a hand on her belly. "I can't go back to Silverton. My father made that clear, but I can't stay here forever either. It's your home, your life. You can stay as long as you need." Jonas interrupted. "I told you that. I meant it. But what kind of life is it? For me, for the baby, hiding in a cabin because everyone thinks you're a murderer." Jonas set down his carving. "You're right. That's no life." He stared into the fire. "Which is why when spring comes, I'm going back down to Silverton. Going to demand Judge Dinger hear my case properly. Get sworn testimony from Henry and the other Ute scouts. Clear my name once and for all." "Why didn't you do that before?" "Because before I didn't care what people thought. I just wanted to be left alone with my grief." He looked at her directly. "But now there's a reason to care. You and that baby deserve better than living in exile with a man people call a murderer. So I'll fix it. Make it right. What if the judge doesn't listen? What if... Then we'll figure something else out." Jonas's voice was firm. "But I won't let your father's cruelty and this town's prejudice dictate your life. Or mine. Not anymore." Mary Beth felt tears prickling her eyes. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know me." "I know enough." Jonas picked up his carving again. "I know you held your head up on that auction block even when your own father was shaming you. I know you thanked me, even when you were terrified. I know you spent today mending my clothes instead of falling apart. That's enough." They sat in comfortable silence after that Jonas carving, while Mary Beth watched the fire. Eventually, exhaustion crept over her and she moved to the bed. "Good night, Jonas." "Good night, Mary Beth." She lay down, pulled the furs over her, and closed her eyes. But sleep didn't come immediately. Her mind churned with questions, fears, fragile hopes. In the darkness, Jonas's voice came quietly. "Mary Beth, you asked what I'm doing this for. Truth is, I'm doing it for me as much as for you. Been dead inside for 2 years, just going through motions. But yesterday when I saw you on that block," he paused, "I felt something again. Anger, purpose, something. Reminded me I'm still alive, that I can still do something that matters. I'm glad," Mary Beth whispered. "I'm glad you were there." "Me too." The fire burned lower. Outside, wolves howled in the distance closer than last night. Jonas stood and checked the door, made sure it was barred. Then he lay down on his pallet near the fire. "They won't come near the cabin," he said, answering her unspoken fear. "Fire and human scent keeps them away, but we'll need to be careful when we go out." "Have they ever attacked you?" "Once, 3 years ago before Sarah. I was alone caught in a storm and a pack surrounded me. I killed 2 before the others backed off." His voice was matter-of-fact. "Wolves are smart. They learn quick who's dangerous and who's prey." Mary Beth shivered despite the warmth of the furs. "Don't worry," Jonas added. "Long as you're with me, they won't try anything. They remember." She wanted to find that comforting, but it just reminded her how dangerous this life was. How dependent she was on Jonas's knowledge and strength. What would happen if something happened to him, if he fell on the trap line or got caught in a storm or... "Stop it," she told herself firmly. "You survived yesterday. You'll survive tomorrow, one day at a time." The baby kicked hard enough to make her gasp softly. "You okay?" Jonas asked immediately. "Yes, just the baby moving." "That's good. Means it's strong." "How do you know?" "Sarah told me. She said babies who kick a lot are fighters. They're telling you they're alive, they're here, they're not giving up." Pause. "Your baby's a fighter, Mary Beth, just like its mother." Tears slid down Mary Beth's cheeks in the darkness. She didn't respond because she couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. Eventually, she heard Jonas's breathing slow and deepen. He'd fallen asleep by the fire, keeping watch even in rest. Mary Beth placed both hands on her belly and whispered to the child inside her, "We're going to be okay. I don't know how yet, but we will. We have to be." The wind picked up outside, rattling the shutters. Snow began falling again, soft and steady. The cabin creaked and settled around them. And in that moment, despite everything, the fear, the uncertainty, the painful past and unclear future, Mary Beth felt something she hadn't felt in months. Safe. Not happy. Not settled. But safe. It was enough. For now, it was enough. Morning came with a sharp knock on the door. Mary Beth jerked awake, heart pounding. Jonas was already up, rifle in hand, moving toward the door with silent speed. "Who's there?" he called out. "It's Henry. Put the gun down before you shoot your best friend, you paranoid bastard." Jonas relaxed immediately. He unbarred the door and opened it. A man stood in the doorway, nearly as tall as Jonas, but leaner, with long black hair and dark eyes. He wore a mix of traditional Ute clothing and frontier gear, and he carried himself with absolute confidence. "Heard an interesting story in town yesterday," Henry said, stepping inside without invitation. "Something about you buying a woman off an auction block." His eyes found Mary Beth, who'd sat up in bed, clutching the furs around her. "Guess the story was true." "Henry, 2 Elk, this is Mary Beth." Jonas moved to block Henry's view of her, giving her privacy to compose herself. My wife. Henry's eyebrows shot up. Your wife, Jonas, what the hell did you do? Stopped something that shouldn't have been happening. Henry studied Jonas for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Like you always do. He turned to Mary Beth and spoke directly to her. I'm Henry Two Elk. Sarah was my cousin. Jonas is the brother of my heart, which means you're family now, whether you like it or not. Mary Beth found her voice. Nice to meet you. You hungry? Jonas asked Henry. Got coffee and leftover cornbread. Always hungry. Henry sat at the table like he owned the place. But first, tell me what happened, and don't leave anything out. While Jonas made breakfast, he told Henry everything: the auction, the payment, the marriage papers, the ride up the mountain. Henry listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail. Harlan Briggs, he finally said. That man's poison. Always has been. You know him? Mary Beth asked. Know of him. He caused trouble for my people few years back. Tried to claim some of our hunting grounds, said we were trespassing. Sheriff Morrison shut him down, but barely. Henry accepted a cup of coffee from Jonas. Man's got no honor. Selling his own daughter proves it. Question is, what happens now? Jonas said, sitting down. Can't hide up here forever, and I want my name cleared before spring. Henry's expression turned serious. About that, I've got news, not good news. Jonas went very still. What kind of news? Railroads coming through. Surveyors were in the valley last week marking routes. Henry pulled out a folded map and spread it on the table. They want to run a line straight through this mountain. Your land, Jonas. They'll need to buy you out or force you out. They can't force me out. This is legal homestead. They can, if they get the territorial governor involved, claim it's for the greater good. Henry traced a line on the map. And I heard something else. Harlan Briggs met with the railroad men. Long meeting. Money changed hands. Jonas and Mary Beth exchanged glances. What does that mean? Mary Beth asked. Henry looked at her seriously. It means your father made a deal. I don't know the specifics yet, but nothing good comes from Harlan Briggs and railroad money in the same sentence. Jonas's jaw tightened. He sold her to get her out of town. Now he's probably telling the railroad she's abandoned property or some such nonsense, trying to claim rights to the baby. The baby. Mary Beth's voice rose in alarm. Why would they want my baby? Because babies mean legitimacy, Henry said gently. Railroad wants this land. If they can prove Jonas is unfit still under suspicion for Sarah's death, they can challenge his homestead. And if they can prove he took a pregnant woman from her rightful guardian. He trailed off meaningfully. Mary Beth felt sick. They'll say he kidnapped me, that I'm not here willingly. Exactly. Henry looked at Jonas. You didn't just rescue her yesterday, brother. You walked right into their trap. The cabin fell silent except for the crackling fire. Mary Beth felt the walls closing in. She'd thought escaping Silverton meant escaping her father's cruelty. But he'd been planning something bigger all along. So, what do we do? Jonas asked finally. Henry folded the map carefully. We fight, but we fight smart. He looked at Mary Beth. First question, do you want to be here, truth now? No one's judging. Mary Beth didn't hesitate. Yes, I want to be here. My father sold me like livestock. Jonas gave me dignity, gave me choice. Whatever my father's planning, I won't be part of it." Henry nodded, satisfied. "Good. That's our foundation. You're here willingly. You're legally married to Jonas. I assume you have the papers. Right here." Jonas pulled them from his coat pocket. "Good. We'll need those. Now, the railroad can't touch you if Jonas's name is cleared, which means we need Judge Dinger to hear this case properly. I'll ride to his circuit stops, find out when he's coming through. Meantime, I'll gather testimony from the Ute elders who were there when we found Jonas after the blizzard." "Will the judge accept Ute testimony?" Mary Beth asked. "He's a good man, fair, and he knows me. Trusts my word." Henry stood. "But it'll take time. Judge won't circuit through here until late February at the earliest. Can you hold out until then?" "We'll hold," Jonas said firmly. Henry clasped Jonas's shoulder. "I know you will. You're the most stubborn son of a bitch I ever met." He turned to Mary Beth. "Take care of him, and yourself. Winter up here is hard, but you've got a good man watching over you. Best man I know." "I'm starting to realize that." Henry smiled. "Smart woman. No wonder Jonas married you." After Henry left the cabin, felt quieter, heavier. Mary Beth and Jonas sat at the table, both processing what they'd learned. "Your father planned this," Jonas said finally. "All of it. The auction was just the first move. He wants the baby." Mary Beth's hands moved protectively to her stomach. "He sold me to get me out of the way, and now he's trying to figure out how to claim the child. He won't get it. I promise you that. But if the railroad, then we'll fight the railroad." Jonas's voice was steel. "I didn't rescue you yesterday just to hand you back to them. Whatever comes, we face it together." Mary Beth looked at this man who'd become her husband in name only. This man everyone called a murderer. This man who was the gentlest, most honorable person she'd ever met. "Together," she agreed softly. Outside, snow continued falling. Somewhere in the valley below, men in expensive suits were drawing lines on maps, planning to tear through the mountain like it meant nothing. Somewhere in Silverton, her father was counting his money and plotting his next move. But up here in this cabin, two people who'd lost everything were finding something worth fighting for. Each other. Not in romance. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But in the simple, profound truth that some people are worth saving and some fights are worth fighting, and mercy is the strongest foundation on which to build anything at all. The storm outside grew fiercer. But inside, the fire burned warm, and for the first time, Mary Beth began to believe they might actually survive what was coming. 3 weeks passed in a rhythm Mary Beth never expected to find comforting. Wake before dawn, help Jonas with breakfast, watch him head out to check traps or cut firewood, spend the day mending cooking, learning how to survive in this wilderness. Welcome him back at dusk, share a meal, sit by the fire while he carved and she sewed, sleep, repeat. It was simple. It was hard. It was nothing like the life she'd imagined for herself. It was also the first peace she'd known in a year. But peace never lasts when men want what you have. The morning everything changed started like any other. Jonas was sharpening his axe by the door while Mary Beth kneaded bread dough at the table. Her belly had grown noticeably larger in the past weeks, making it harder to move, harder to breathe. The baby seemed to kick constantly now, like it was running out of room. "You're quieter than usual," Jonas observed without looking up from his work. "Just thinking." "About..." Mary Beth pressed her hands into the dough, feeling the give and resistance. About what happens when this baby comes. I'm 8 months now, maybe less than 4 weeks left. Jonas's hands stilled on the whetstone. I've been thinking about that too. Have you ever delivered a baby? Helped with 3, 2 calves and a foal? He caught her expression and added quickly, but I was there when Sarah's sister gave birth. Watched the whole thing. Know what to do if things go normal. And if they don't go normal, then we deal with it. Jonas met her eyes. I won't lie to you, Mary Beth. Childbirth is dangerous up here. No doctor, no midwife. But women have been having babies in worse conditions since the beginning of time. You're strong. The baby's strong. We'll manage. Mary Beth wanted to believe him. She kneaded harder, taking out her fear on the dough. There's something else bothering you, Jonas said. She hesitated, then spoke the fear that had been growing for days. What if my father's right? What if I'm not fit to be a mother? I couldn't even keep myself from getting into this situation in the first place. Jonas set down the axe and whetstone. He came to the table and sat across from her, waiting until she looked at him. Your father is a cruel, bitter man who sold his own daughter for $5. Nothing he says about you is true. His voice was firm. You got taken in by a man who used God's words to manipulate you. That's on him, not you. And every day since I brought you here, you've worked harder than anyone I know. You're going to be a good mother because you already are one. You're already protecting that baby, already making sacrifices for it. How do you know? Because you're still here, still fighting, still getting up every morning even when you're scared. Jonas reached across the table like he might take her hand, then seemed to think better of it and pulled back. That's what mothers do. They keep going even when they're terrified. Sarah taught me that. Mary Beth felt her eyes burning. Thank you. Just the truth. A sharp knock interrupted the moment. 3 quick raps, a pause, then 2 more. Jonas relaxed slightly. That's Henry. He opened the door, and Henry pushed inside, bringing cold air and urgency. We've got problems. Henry didn't bother with pleasantries. Big ones. Jonas closed the door. What happened? Judge Dinger's not coming. Henry pulled off his gloves. Got word yesterday. He's been delayed in Denver. Won't make it through the territory until April at the earliest. April? Mary Beth's voice rose. But the baby? I know. Henry's expression was grim. And it gets worse. The railroad filed a claim with the territorial governor. They're saying this land is needed for public infrastructure. They've got 60 days to complete the acquisition, or the claim expires. Jonas's jaw tightened. 60 days from when? From last week, which means you've got about 7 weeks before they can legally force you out. They can't do that without a court order. They can if they prove the current landowner is unfit or has abandoned the claim. Henry looked at Mary Beth, which is where your father comes in. He's claiming Jonas kidnapped you, that you're being held against your will, that the marriage was coerced. Mary Beth felt the room spin. That's a lie. We know it's a lie. But they've got 3 people from town who swore statements saying you looked terrified on the auction block, that Jonas threatened your father, that you were crying and trying to get away. I was terrified of my father, not Jonas. Truth doesn't matter if we can't prove it. Henry paced the small cabin. And without the judge here to hear your testimony, there's no way to counter their narrative. Jonas stood very still, thinking. Mary Beth recognized that stillness now. It was how he looked before making a decision. "Then we go to them," Jonas said finally. "What?" Both Henry and Mary Beth spoke at once. "We go down to Silverton. Face them directly. Let Mary Beth tell her story to anyone who'll listen." Jonas looked at Mary Beth. "If you're willing." "Are you insane?" Henry exploded. "The moment you set foot in that town, they'll arrest you. Kidnapping, coercion, maybe even attempted murder if they're feeling creative." "Not if I have witnesses. Ute witnesses. You said yourself the elders would testify." "For the judge, yes. But to a hostile town that already thinks you killed Sarah, they'll dismiss it as Indians protecting one of their own." "Then what do you suggest?" Jonas's voice was sharp. "We sit up here and wait for them to force us out. Let them take Mary Beth and the baby. I suggest we run. Take Mary Beth somewhere safe. Montana maybe, or Wyoming. Disappear until this blows over. And abandon my land. Everything Sarah and I built." Jonas shook his head. "No, I'm done running from lies." "Jonas," Henry started. "No." Jonas cut him off. "I should have done this 2 years ago. Should have made them listen, made them see the truth. I was too lost in grief to care what they thought, but that ends now." Mary Beth stood, one hand braced on the table for support. "He's right, Henry. Running just proves their story. Makes it look like we're guilty." "You're 8 months pregnant," Henry said bluntly. "You think riding down this mountain in winter is safe? Safer than waiting for them to come drag me down by force." Mary Beth moved to stand beside Jonas. "I won't hide anymore. Won't let my father control my life from a distance." Henry looked between them, then threw up his hands. "You're both crazy. You know that, right?" "Probably." Jonas almost smiled. "But we're right." "Fine. Fine." Henry pulled out a chair and sat heavily. "Then we do this smart. We don't just walk into town. We plan. We prepare. We make sure there's no way they can twist this against you." For the next 2 hours, they strategized. Henry would ride ahead, gather the Ute elders, make sure they were willing to come to Silverton and testify. Jonas and Mary Beth would follow 3 days later, giving Henry time to set up support. They'd arrive on a Sunday morning when most of the town would be at church, maximum witnesses to hear Mary Beth's story. "What about Sheriff Morrison?" Mary Beth asked. "Will he arrest Jonas?" "Morrison's not a bad man, just weak." Henry leaned back in his chair. "He won't make a move without clear cause. If we handle this right, he'll have to listen. And if we handle it wrong, then Jonas goes to jail and you go back to your father." Henry's voice was brutal in its honesty. "Which is why we can't handle it wrong." After Henry left to begin preparations, the cabin fell into tense silence. Mary Beth tried to go back to her bread, but her hands shook too much to work the dough. "I'm scared," she admitted quietly. "Me too." Jonas came to stand beside her. "But fear's just another kind of weather. It passes." "What if it doesn't? What if we go down there and everything falls apart?" "Then at least we tried. At least we fought." Jonas's voice was steady. "I've spent 2 years letting people believe the worst about me. I'm done with that. Whatever happens, I'd rather face it standing than spend another day hiding." Mary Beth looked up at him. In the past week, she'd learned to read his expressions, the set of his jaw when he was determined, the way his eyes softened when he was being gentle, the small smile that meant he was proud of something she'd done. She'd also learned something else, something she hadn't expected and wasn't quite ready to name. She trusted him, completely. with her life, with her child's life, with everything. "Okay," she said. "We go to Silverton, we fight." Jonas nodded once. 3 days, that gives us time to prepare." Those 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Jonas made sure the cabin was secure, that everything was locked away or protected in case they didn't come back. He taught Mary Beth how to shoot the rifle, even though she could barely hold it with her belly in the way. He packed supplies carefully, planning for every possibility. Mary Beth focused on making herself presentable. She had exactly one decent dress, the one Jonas had bought her in town 3 weeks ago when he'd made a supply run without her. She let out the seams as much as possible, trying to make it fit over her swollen stomach. She practiced what she'd say, how she'd tell her story. On the 3rd night, neither of them slept much. Mary Beth lay in the big bed, staring at the ceiling, while Jonas sat by the fire, also wakeful. "Jonas," she called softly into the darkness. "Yeah. If something happens to me tomorrow, if the baby comes early, or if there's trouble, nothing's going to happen. But if it does," she pushed herself up on one elbow, "promise me you'll protect the baby, no matter what, even if you have to leave me behind. Mary Beth, promise me." The silence stretched long, then quietly, "I promise, but it won't come to that." "How do you know?" "Because I'm not losing anyone else." His voice was fierce in the darkness. "Not you, not that baby, not to your father, not to the railroad, not to anyone. I've had enough of losing people I care about." The words hung in the air between them. People I care about. Mary Beth's heart did something complicated in her chest. "You care about me." Another long silence. Then, "Yeah, I do. Didn't plan on it, but there it is." "I care about you too," Mary Beth whispered. "I know it's only been 3 weeks, and I know this isn't a real marriage, but—" "It's real enough," Jonas interrupted. "Maybe not in the way most marriages are, but it's real in the ways that matter. We take care of each other. We trust each other. That's more than a lot of married people have." Mary Beth settled back into the fur's warmth spreading through her chest despite her fear. "When this is over, when we've won—" "When we've won," Jonas corrected. "When we've won," she agreed. "What happens then? Then we figure out what kind of life we want to build, together or separate, whatever feels right. No pressure, no expectations, just possibilities." "I'd like that. Possibilities." "Me too." Mary Beth closed her eyes, and this time sleep came. They left at first light. The ride down the mountain was harder than Mary Beth remembered. Every jolt sent pain through her back. The baby kicked constantly, seeming to sense her anxiety. Jonas rode slowly, carefully, one arm always steady around her waist. They didn't talk much. There was too much to say and not enough words. Halfway down, they met Henry coming up the trail with 5 Ute elders. All older men, weathered and wise, who nodded gravely at Jonas and studied Mary Beth with careful eyes. "These are the men who found me after Sarah died," Jonas told her quietly. "They're risking a lot coming to town. White folks don't always treat Indian testimony kindly." One of the elders, a man with silver braids and eyes like black flint, spoke in Ute. Henry translated. "He says he remembers the blizzard. Remembers finding you half dead still trying to dig with ruined hands. He says any man who says you killed your wife is a liar or a fool." Jonas bowed his head slightly. "Tell him I'm grateful. Tell him all of them have my gratitude." Henry translated, and the elder nodded once. Then he looked at Mary Beth and spoke again. He says you carry your child with strength, Henry translated. He says that's good. The child will need a strong mother for the battles ahead. Tell him I'll protect this baby with my life, Mary Beth said firmly. Henry translated, and for the first time the elder smiled. He said something else longer this time. He says Sarah would have liked you, would have called you sister. Henry's voice went soft. He says Sarah's spirit walks with you, that she sent Jonas to the auction block that day, that this is all part of a path only the spirits can see. Mary Beth felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you, she whispered, even though she wasn't sure she believed in spirits or paths or any of it. They continued down together, a strange procession. 2 white people, 1 Ute scout, and 5 Ute elders riding toward a town that didn't want most of them there. Silverton came into view as the sun reached its peak. The town looked smaller than Mary Beth remembered, less significant, just a collection of wooden buildings huddled in a valley acting like it was the center of the world. They rode slowly down the main street. People stopped and stared. Conversations died mid-sentence. Children pointed. Women gasped. There he is. The murderer's back. Someone get the sheriff. Jonas ignored them all. He kept the horse moving steadily toward the church at the end of the street. It was Sunday morning. Church bells were just starting to ring. Perfect timing. They stopped in front of the church steps just as people began filing out from the service. Pastor Williams emerged first, saw them, and stopped dead. Jonas Rohr, he said slowly. You have considerable nerve showing your face here. I have considerable truth to tell. Jonas dismounted, then helped Mary Beth down with careful hands. And all these good church folk are going to listen. The crowd was gathering quickly. Mary Beth recognized faces from the auction block. Mrs. Henderson, the butcher's boy, men who'd laughed at her humiliation. And there, pushing through the crowd, his face red with rage, was Harlan Briggs. That's my daughter, he shouted. Sheriff, arrest that man. He kidnapped her. Sheriff Morrison emerged from the crowd, hand on his gun. Jonas, I'm going to need you to explain what's going on here. Gladly, Jonas's voice carried across the silent crowd. I'm here to tell the truth, all of it. And if anyone wants to arrest me afterward, they're welcome to try. He looked at Mary Beth, a question in his eyes. She nodded once. 3 weeks ago, Jonas began, his voice strong and clear. I came to this town for supplies. I found a crowd gathered in the square, and I saw this woman, he gestured to Mary Beth, standing on an auction block while her father sold her to the highest bidder, sold his own pregnant daughter like she was livestock. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some people had the grace to look ashamed. I paid $5 for the legal papers making her my wife. Not because I wanted a wife, but because no human being should be sold, not by their own blood, not for any reason. You kidnapped her, Harlan pushed forward. Look at her, she's terrified. I'm not terrified of my husband. Mary Beth's voice rang out clear and strong. She stepped forward, standing beside Jonas. I'm terrified of you, Father, terrified of what you did to me, what you tried to do to my child. The crowd went dead silent. You sold me. Mary Beth continued, her voice shaken but determined. After Mama died, you got mean, got drunk, blamed me for everything. When you found out I was pregnant, you didn't try to help me. You didn't try to find the man responsible. You just decided I was worthless and got rid of me the first chance you got. That's not, Harlan started. And now you want me back. Mary Beth's voice rose. Why? Because you miss me, because you regret what you did. She laughed bitterly. No, because the railroad's paying you, because my baby's worth money to you now. Gasps from the crowd, people turning to look at Harlan with new suspicion. That's a lie. Harlan's face went from red to purple. I'm her father. I have rights. You gave up those rights when you sold me. Mary Beth's hands rested protectively on her belly. Jonas saved me, gave me shelter, treated me with more respect in 3 weeks than you showed me in 22 years. And I won't let you take this baby. I won't let you profit from selling your own grandchild. Sheriff, Harlan turned desperately to Morrison. Are you going to let her talk to me like this? Morrison looked uncomfortable. Harlan, if what she's saying is true, it's all true. Henry stepped forward, the 5 Ute elders behind him. And we have proof. Documents showing Harlan Briggs met with the railroad representatives. Money exchanged. Plans to challenge Jonas's land claim using the baby as leverage. More gasps. The crowd was turning now. Mary Beth could feel it. People who'd watched her humiliation 3 weeks ago were finally seeing the truth. These elders, Henry gestured to the men behind him, were there when we found Jonas after his wife died. They saw his ruined hands, saw the avalanche site, saw the truth. Sarah Rohr died in a tragic accident. Jonas nearly died trying to save her. The only crime here is how this town's treated him since. One of the elders spoke in Ute. Henry translated. He says lies are like poison. They spread through a community, killing slowly. He says this town has been poisoned by lies about Jonas for 2 years. Time to cleanse the poison with truth. Pastor Williams stepped forward. I was at the auction. I saw what happened. His voice carried authority. Harlan, I told you then it was wrong. I'm telling you now, you have no moral ground to stand on. You sold your daughter. That's a fact witnessed by half this town. But the law, Harlan sputtered, the law says she's married to Jonas. Sheriff Morrison pulled out the papers Jonas had given him. Legal and binding, signed by you, Harlan. You can't claim kidnapping when you literally sold her with legal documents. Harlan looked around wildly, seeing the crowd turning against him. The railroad will hear about this. The railroad can talk to Judge Dinger when he arrives in April. Morrison's voice was firm. Until then, this matter is settled. Mary Beth Rohr is married to Jonas Rohr. They're free to return to their home unmolested. This isn't over, Harlan snarled. Yes, it is. Jonas's voice was quiet but final. You don't get to hurt her anymore. You don't get to profit from her child. And if you or the railroad try anything else, I'll come back down here and tell everyone exactly how you conspired to steal land using your own grandchild as leverage. Let's see how the good people of Silverton feel about that. Harlan's face twisted with rage, but he had no response. He was beaten, and he knew it. The crowd began to disperse, people talking in hushed voices. Some approached Mary Beth and Jonas. I'm sorry, Mrs. Henderson said quietly. I should have spoken up that day, should have done something. We all should have, another woman added. It was wrong. We knew it was wrong. Pastor Williams came last. Jonas, I owe you an apology. I believed the whispers about Sarah's death. I should have known better. Should have asked more questions. Jonas nodded stiffly. People believe what they want to believe. Still, the pastor looked genuinely remorseful. If you need anything, a proper church service for you and Mary Beth supplies anything, you let me know. We're fine, but Jonas's voice had softened slightly. But thank you. They mounted the horse, Mary Beth settling in front of Jonas once more. Henry and the elders would stay behind, make sure the story spread properly, ensure Harlan couldn't twist the narrative. As they rode out of Silverton, Mary Beth looked back one last time. Her father stood on the church steps alone, watching them leave. He looked smaller now, diminished. She felt nothing for him. No anger, no sadness, no satisfaction, just nothing. "You okay?" Jonas asked quietly. "Yeah." Mary Beth leaned back against his chest. "I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. You were brave down there. Braver than I expected." "I learned from the best." She smiled. "Besides, I was tired of being afraid. Tired of letting him make me feel small." They rode in comfortable silence for a while, the mountain rising before them. Home. "Jonas," Mary Beth said eventually. "Yeah, earlier you said you cared about me." She felt him tense slightly. "I did." "Did you mean it?" Long pause. Then quietly, "Yes, I meant it." "Good." Mary Beth's smile widened. "Because I care about you too, more than I probably should after 3 weeks, but I do." Jonas's arm tightened around her waist just slightly. "More than you should. Well, we are married, even if it started as just papers." She took a breath. "But maybe it could be more than that. Eventually, if you wanted." "Mary Beth, I'm not asking for anything now," she interrupted quickly. "I know it's too soon. I know you still love Sarah. I know this baby isn't yours. But maybe someday—" "Someday sounds good," Jonas said softly. "Let's start with someday." Relief flooded through her. "Okay, someday." They climbed higher, leaving Silverton behind. The sky was clear, the sun bright on the snow. The path ahead was uncertain. They still had to face the railroad, still had to wait for the judge, still had to survive winter and childbirth, and everything else life would throw at them. But for the first time, Mary Beth felt like they might actually make it. Not just survive, but thrive. Because they had something her father and the railroad men didn't understand. They had truth. They had each other. They had a reason to fight, and sometimes that was enough. The cabin came into view as the sun began to set. Smoke still rose from the chimney Jonas had banked the fire carefully before they left. Everything was exactly as they'd left it. Jonas helped Mary Beth down, and she stood for a moment just looking at the cabin. 3 weeks ago, this place had seemed like exile. Prison. Now it looked like home. "Welcome back," Jonas said, opening the door. Mary Beth stepped inside, feeling warmth wash over her. "It's good to be home." And she meant it, every word. 2 weeks passed in fragile peace. Mary Beth grew larger every day, her movements slower, her breath shorter. The baby seemed to have run out of room entirely, pressing against her ribs with every kick. She couldn't sleep more than an hour at a time before needing to shift positions or use the outhouse. Jonas watched her with increasing concern, though he tried to hide it. He'd started staying closer to the cabin, checking traps within an hour's walk, instead of his usual 4-hour circuit. He made sure the water barrel stayed full, the firewood stacked high, everything prepared. They were waiting, both of them, waiting for the baby, waiting for Henry to return with news, waiting for the next move from Harlan or the railroad, waiting for something to break. It broke on a Tuesday morning. Mary Beth woke to pain. Not the baby, she'd had false contractions before and knew the difference. This was sharper, located deep in her back, radiating around her sides. Jonas. Her voice came out strained. He was beside the bed in seconds, already half-dressed. What's wrong? I don't know. Pain, different from before. Jonas's jaw tightened. Where? She showed him, pressing her hands to her lower back. He felt carefully, his touch gentle but professional. Could be the baby moving into position. Could be your body preparing. He met her eyes. Could be nothing. How bad is it? Bad enough. Mary Beth tried to sit up and gasped. God, it hurts. Okay, just breathe. Jonas helped put her into a sitting position, supporting her weight. We knew how this was coming. You're going to be fine. But his voice had that careful quality that meant he was more worried than he was letting on. The pain eased after a few minutes and Mary Beth could breathe again. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe... Another wave hit stronger this time. She gripped Jonas's arm hard enough to leave marks. That's not nothing, Jonas said grimly. That's labor starting. It's too early. I've got at least 2 more weeks. Babies come when they come. Jonas was already moving, gathering supplies he'd prepared weeks ago. Clean cloths, boiled water, and sealed jars, rope, a sharp knife. We'll manage. You're strong. The baby's strong. We'll manage. Mary Beth wanted to believe him, but fear clawed at her throat. Women died in childbirth all the time, even with doctors and midwives. Up here, with just Jonas, with no one to help if something went wrong. Hey. Jonas knelt beside the bed, forcing her to look at him. I've got you. I won't let anything happen to you or that baby. You trust me. Yes? Then trust me now. This is going to hurt like hell, and it's going to be scary, but you're going to get through it. We both are. The contractions came and went through the morning, irregular and unpredictable. Sometimes 10 minutes apart, sometimes 30. Mary Beth paced when she could, trying to ease the pressure in her back. Jonas stayed close, offering water, supporting her weight when she needed it, keeping the fire going. Around noon, the contractions suddenly stopped. Is that normal? Mary Beth asked, fear making her voice sharp. Sometimes labor stalls. Body takes a break before the hard work. Jonas helped her back to the bed. Rest while you can. But she couldn't rest. Her body felt wrong, stretched too tight, like something was about to snap. The baby hadn't moved in over an hour, which terrified her more than the pain had. Jonas, something's wrong. The baby's probably sleeping, saving energy. No, it's not that. I can feel it. Something's... She stopped mid-sentence as warm liquid gushed down her legs, soaking through her nightgown and pooling on the floor. Jonas saw it and went very still for 1 second. Then he was moving fast, stripping the wet fabric off her, wrapping her in clean blankets, helping her onto the bed that he'd already prepared with layers of cloth. Water broke. That's good. Means things are progressing. His voice was calm, controlled, but Mary Beth could see tension in every line of his body. The contractions came back with a vengeance. Harder, faster, relentless. Mary Beth lost track of time. Everything blurred into cycles of pain and brief respite. Jonas stayed beside her, wiping sweat from her face, offering water when she could drink, murmuring encouragement when she could hear him. You're doing great. Just breathe through it. That's it. Good. You're so strong. Just a little longer. But it wasn't a little longer. Hours passed. The sun moved across the sky and began its descent. The contractions were coming one on top of another now, barely any break between them, and Mary Beth felt like she was being torn apart from the inside. I can't, she gasped between pains. Jonas, I can't do this. Yes, you can. You are doing it. He pressed a cool cloth to her forehead. "I need to check how far along you are. Is that okay?" She nodded, too exhausted to care about modesty. Jonas checked quickly, efficiently, and his expression darkened. "What?" Mary Beth's fear spiked. "What's wrong? You're fully dilated. Should be able to push now. But the baby—" He paused. "The baby's positioned wrong. I can feel a shoulder instead of a head." Terror flooded through her. "What does that mean?" "It means I need to try to turn it. From the inside." Jonas met her eyes. "It's going to hurt. Bad. But if I don't, the baby could get stuck. You could both—" He didn't finish, but he didn't need to. "Do it," Mary Beth said through gritted teeth. "Whatever you have to do, do it." Jonas washed his hands thoroughly, then looked at her one more time. "I'm sorry." The pain that followed was unlike anything Mary Beth had ever experienced. Worse than the contractions, worse than anything. She heard herself screaming distantly like it was someone else. Jonas worked quickly but carefully, his face set in grim concentration. "Got it," he finally said, pulling back. "Baby's turned. Head's down now. Next contraction you push. Push as hard as you can." Mary Beth was crying, she realized. Tears streaming down her face, her whole body shaking. But when the next contraction hit, she bore down with everything she had. Good again. Another contraction, another push, and another, and another. "I can see the head. Come on, Mary Beth, one more big push." She gathered every last bit of strength she had left and pushed. The baby slid free in a rush of fluid and blood, and suddenly the cabin was filled with a different sound. Not Mary Beth's screams, but a baby's cry. Loud, angry, alive. "It's a boy," Jonas said, his voice rough with emotion. "You have a son." He worked quickly, cutting and tying the cord, wiping the baby clean with soft cloths. The baby screamed the entire time, which Jonas said was good. Strong lungs meant strong baby. Then he placed the tiny wriggling bundle on Mary Beth's chest. She looked down at her son through tears. He was red-faced and furious, his little fists waving. But he was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, a shock of dark hair. Perfect. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi, baby. I'm your mama." The baby quieted at her voice, his unfocused eyes seeming to search for her face. "He knows you," Jonas said softly. "Knows your voice from inside." Mary Beth looked up at Jonas, who stood beside the bed watching them both. His face was streaked with sweat and blood, his shirt ruined, his hands shaking slightly now that the crisis had passed. "You saved us," she whispered. "Both of us." Jonas shook his head. "You did the hard part. I just helped." "Jonas, we're not done yet." He was all business again. "You need to deliver the afterbirth. Then I need to make sure you're not bleeding too much. Can you stay awake a little longer?" Mary Beth nodded, though exhaustion was pulling at her like a physical weight. The afterbirth came easier than the baby, and Jonas checked her, carefully making sure everything was as it should be. When he was satisfied, he helped her into a clean nightgown and changed the bedding beneath her while she held the baby. "You did good," he said, quietly, tucking clean blankets around them both. "Better than good. You were incredible." I screamed a lot. Everyone screams. Sarah screamed so loud during her sister's birth she scared off a wolf pack 3 valleys over. Jonas almost smiled. "It's allowed." The baby was rooting around, making small sounds. "He's hungry," Jonas observed. "Do you know how to—" Mary Beth had watched her mother with the neighbors' babies. She arranged the baby awkwardly, trying to figure out the mechanics, and Jonas looked away to give her privacy. After a few fumbling attempts, the baby latched on and Mary Beth gasped at the strange sensation. Is it supposed to hurt? At first. Gets easier. Jonas was cleaning up, gathering all the soiled cloths and linens. You'll both figure it out. They sat in silence for a while, Mary Beth nursing the baby while Jonas worked. The sun had set completely now, and firelight filled the cabin with warm shadows. Everything felt surreal, suspended in time. "What are you going to name him?" Jonas asked eventually. Mary Beth looked down at her son. She'd thought about names for months, but none of them felt right anymore. None of them fit this new life, this unexpected family. "Samuel," she said suddenly. "It means asked of God, or heard by God. I can't remember which." "Samuel," Jonas tested the name. "Samuel's good. Strong name." "Samuel Roar." Mary Beth looked up at Jonas questioningly. Jonas went very still. "That's your choice to make. He needs a father's name, and you're the only father he's going to know." Mary Beth's voice was firm despite her exhaustion. "If you'll claim him, if you want to." "Mary Beth, he's not mine. Everyone knows that. He's mine, and I'm yours, at least on paper." She paused. "But maybe not just on paper anymore. Maybe for real if you're willing." Jonas sat down slowly in the chair beside the bed. "You just gave birth. You're exhausted and probably not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking perfectly clearly." Mary Beth shifted the baby to her other side. "These past weeks living here with you, learning from you, seeing how you take care of things, how you took care of me." She met his eyes. "I know it's only been a few weeks. I know this is sudden. But I care about you, Jonas, and I think you care about us too." "I do," Jonas said quietly. "More than I planned to, more than I probably should." "Then why not make it real? Not tonight, not right away, but eventually. Be Samuel's father, be my husband, for real, not just on paper." Jonas looked at the baby in her arms, then back at her face. "I'm twice your age. I don't care. People will talk. Let them talk. They already think the worst of us anyway. I still love Sarah. I'll always love Sarah. I know." Mary Beth's voice was gentle. "I'm not asking you to stop. I'm not trying to replace her. I'm just asking if there's room in your heart for us too." Jonas was quiet for a long time, his scarred hands folded in his lap. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. "Sarah told me once that the heart doesn't divide love, it multiplies it. That loving one person doesn't mean you have less love for another." He looked up, and Mary Beth saw tears in his eyes. "I didn't understand what she meant then, but I think I do now." "So, is that a yes?" "It's a maybe. We can find out together." Jonas reached out and gently touched the baby's head with one finger. "Hey there, Samuel. I'm going to try to be the father you deserve. Might not be good at it at first, but I'll try." Samuel's tiny hand wrapped around Jonas's finger, gripping tight. Jonas let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "He's strong." "He gets it from you," Mary Beth said softly. They stayed like that for a long moment. The three of them connected in the firelight until Samuel finished eating and fell asleep still holding Jonas's finger. Jonas carefully extracted his hand and stood. "You both need rest. Real rest. I'll keep the fire going and wake you when he needs to eat again." "Jonas," he turned back. "Thank you for everything. For saving me that day, for bringing me here, for..." She gestured helplessly. for all of it." "Thank you for letting me," Jonas said simply. Mary Beth fell asleep almost instantly. Samuel tucked safely in the crook of her arm. She dreamed of nothing too exhausted even for dreams. She woke to raised voices. It was still dark, but the fire had been built up and the cabin was filled with tense energy. Jonas stood by the door, rifle in hand, blocking someone from entering. "I told you, you're not welcome here." Jonas's voice was cold as winter steel. "I got rights." That was her father's voice, slurred with whiskey. "That's my daughter, my grandchild." Mary Beth's arms tightened instinctively around Samuel, who stirred but didn't wake. "You sold your rights," Jonas said. "You don't get to come back now. The law says she's my wife and that's my son. You come near them again, I'll put a bullet in you. That clear enough? You threatening me? I'm promising you." There was a long silence. Then Harlan's voice came again, meaner. "Railroad's coming for this land, mountain man. Got the papers filed. You got till March to vacate. Judge or no judge, this land's getting seized. We'll see about that." "Ain't nothing to see. You lost. She lost. That baby's gonna grow up knowing its mama was a whore and its fake daddy was a murderer." The sound of Jonas's fist hitting flesh was loud in the cold air. Mary Beth heard her father cry out, heard him stumbling backward. "Get off my land," Jonas said, his voice deadly quiet. "You come back, you won't leave alive. That's not a threat. That's a fact. You'll pay for this. You'll both pay. Yeah, stand in line." Jonas slammed the door and barred it. He stood there for a moment, breathing hard, his knuckles bloody. Then he seemed to remember Mary Beth was awake and turned. "Sorry, didn't mean to wake you." "Is he gone?" "For now." Jonas came to the bed, checking on her and Samuel. "You okay? Baby okay?" "We're fine. Did you really hit him?" "Yeah." Jonas looked at his bleeding knuckles. "Probably shouldn't have. But he called you?" He stopped. "Said things I couldn't let stand." "Thank you." Jonas shook his head. "Nothing to thank me for. He's your father. Shouldn't be me defending you from him. But it is you, and I'm grateful." Jonas sat heavily in the chair. He suddenly looked exhausted, years older than he had that morning. "What did he mean about March?" Mary Beth asked quietly. "About the railroad. They're pushing the seizure through, claiming eminent domain public need. Henry said they'd try it, but I didn't think they'd move this fast." "Can they really take the land?" "If Judge Dinger doesn't get here in time to hear our case." "Maybe." Jonas rubbed his face. "They've got money and lawyers. We've got truth and not much else. That's not nothing. Might not be enough either." Samuel chose that moment to wake up making small hungry sounds. Mary Beth shifted him, tried to get him to latch, fumbled for a few attempts before managing it. Jonas watched them, his expression unreadable. "What are you thinking?" Mary Beth asked. "That I'd burn this whole mountain down before I let them take you, before I let them take him." Jonas's voice was flat. "I've lost too much already. I won't lose you too." "You won't have to. We'll fight. And if fighting isn't enough, then we'll figure something else out, together." Mary Beth met his eyes over Samuel's head. "That's what we do now, right? We figure things out together." Jonas's expression softened slightly. "Yeah, that's what we do." A knock came at the door, sharp and urgent. Jonas was on his feet instantly, rifle ready. "Who's there?" "It's Henry. Open up. We got trouble." Jonas unbarred the door. Henry burst in, bringing snow and cold air. His horse was outside, lathered and exhausted. "Rode all night to get here," Henry said between breaths. "Judge Dinger's coming, early. He's in the valley now, heard about the railroad situation and pushed his schedule up. He'll be in Silverton tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" Jonas's eyes widened. "That's our chance," Henry finished. "Only chance. Railroad's lawyers are there too. They're filing the final seizure papers tomorrow morning. If the judge signs them before hearing your testimony, it's over." Mary Beth felt her heart racing. "But I just had the baby. I can't ride down that mountain tomorrow." "You won't have to." Henry looked at Jonas. "Judge agreed to come here, to the cabin. I told him Mary Beth just gave birth, can't travel. He said if this land's worth fighting over, he ought to see it anyway. He's coming here tomorrow afternoon. He wants to hear from both of you, see the situation himself, make his ruling on the spot." Henry finally took a breath. "Jonas, this is it. This is our shot. We get one chance to make our case." Jonas looked at Mary Beth and Samuel. "She just went through hell. She needs to rest, not prepare for a legal battle." "I can do it," Mary Beth said firmly. "I can rest after we win." "Mary Beth." "No, Jonas, listen to me." She shifted Samuel to her shoulder, patting his back gently. "My father tried to sell me. The railroad tried to steal from us. They've been pushing and pushing, thinking we'd break, thinking we'd give up." Her voice strengthened. "But I've survived too much to give up now. We both have. So if the judge wants to hear our story, I'll tell it. Tomorrow, next week, whenever. I'll tell it as many times as it takes." Henry grinned. "She's got fire. Sarah would have liked her." "Sarah would have adopted her as a sister in about 5 minutes. Jonas said something like pride in his voice. "So we prepare." Henry pulled out papers from his coat. "I've got testimony from the Ute elders written and signed. Got statements from townspeople who were at the auction. Even got Pastor Williams to write a letter supporting you." He spread the papers on the table. "Railroads got money and lawyers, but we've got truth. Let's make sure the judge sees it." They spent the next few hours going over everything. Henry had been thorough, every detail documented, every witness statement collected. He'd even found the original survey documents showing Jonas's legal claim to the land predating the railroad's interest by 5 years. "This is good," Jonas said, reading through it all. "This might actually work." "It will work," Henry said confidently. "Judge Dinger's fair. He'll see through the railroad's nonsense." "What about my father?" Mary Beth asked. "Will he be there?" "Probably. Railroad's likely paying him to testify against you." Henry's expression darkened. "He'll lie. Say Jonas coerced you, kidnapped you, all of it." "Then I'll tell the truth." Mary Beth's voice was steady. "I'll look the judge in the eye and tell him exactly what my father did, what Jonas did. Let him decide who's telling the truth." Jonas came to sit beside the bed. "You sure you're up for this?" "It's going to be hard." "I'm sure." Mary Beth looked down at Samuel sleeping peacefully in her arms. "I'm doing this for him, so he grows up knowing his mother fought for him, that she didn't just accept whatever cruel men decided for her." "He's lucky to have you as a mother," Jonas said softly. "He's lucky to have you as a father," Mary Beth corrected. Jonas's hand moved to touch Samuel's head, that same gentle gesture from earlier. "I'm going to try my damnedest to deserve that." Henry watched them both, a small smile on his face. "Sarah would have really liked you," he said to Mary Beth. You got the same steel spine she did." "I'll take that as the highest compliment," Mary Beth said. They prepared through the night and into the morning. Jonas made sure the cabin was clean presentable. Henry rode back down to guide the judge up the trail safely. Mary Beth rested as much as she could between feeding Samuel, trying to gather her strength. By early afternoon, she was as ready as she'd ever be. Samuel was fed and sleeping. She'd changed into her best dress, brushed her hair, tried to look like someone worthy of keeping her child in her home. Jonas paced by the window, watching the trail. "They're coming," he said suddenly. "4 horses. Henry's leading." Mary Beth's heart jumped into her throat. This was it. Everything came down to the next few hours. Jonas came to stand beside her. "Whatever happens, you were amazing yesterday, bringing Samuel into the world. That took more courage than anything I've ever done." "We both were amazing," Mary Beth said, "and we're going to be amazing again right now." The sound of horses stopping outside, footsteps on the wooden porch, a firm knock. Jonas squeezed her hand once briefly, then went to open the door. Judge Dinger stood there, a tall man with silver hair and sharp eyes. Behind him were Henry, a man in an expensive suit who must be the railroad's lawyer, and Mary Beth's stomach dropped her father. "Mr. Rohr," the judge said formally. "Mrs. Rohr, thank you for receiving me. Shall we get started?" Jonas stepped aside, letting them all in. The moment of truth had arrived. The cabin suddenly felt too small with 5 adults and a newborn inside. Judge Dinger took the only chair, settling his considerable frame with a grunt. The railroad lawyer, a thin man with wire spectacles and cold eyes, stood behind him, leather satchel in hand. Harlan positioned himself by the door, arms crossed, a smug expression on his face. Henry stayed near Mary Beth and Jonas, a silent show of support. Judge Dinger pulled out a leather notebook and a pencil. "Let's make this simple and quick. I've got a long ride back before dark." He looked at Jonas. "Mr. Rohr, I've read the railroad's petition. They claim you obtained Mrs. Rohr through coercion and false pretenses, that she's being held here against her will, that you're an unfit guardian due to suspicions surrounding your first wife's death." "All lies," Jonas said flatly. "That's what we're here to determine." The judge turned to Mary Beth. "Mrs. Rohr, are you here of your own free will?" Mary Beth stood slowly. Samuel cradled in her arms. Every muscle in her body ached from yesterday's ordeal, but she kept her voice steady. "Yes, Your Honor, completely." "She's lying," Harlan burst out. "She's terrified of him. She's just saying what he told her to say." "Mr. Briggs, you'll have your turn to speak." The judge's voice was sharp. "Right now, I'm asking Mrs. Rohr." He looked at Mary Beth again. "Tell me what happened the day you came to this mountain." Mary Beth took a breath. "My father dragged me to town square and put me on an auction block. He sold me to the highest bidder for $5 gold. The railroad lawyer spoke up. "Your Honor, Mr. Briggs was arranging a marriage to protect his daughter's reputation after she became pregnant out of wedlock. Perfectly legal under territorial law." "Legal, maybe," Mary Beth shot back. "But he didn't do it to protect me. He did it because I was an embarrassment. Because after my mother died, he decided I was worthless." "That's not true." Harlan's face reddened. "I was trying to help you." "Help me?" Mary Beth's voice rose, making Samuel stir in her arms. She lowered her voice but kept her intensity. "You called me a burden and a disgrace in front of the whole town. You told everyone I ate like a horse and complained twice as much. You sold me to whoever had $5, not caring what kind of man he was or what he'd do to me. Because you shamed me, Harlan shouted. You let some traveling preacher knock you up and then expected me to just accept it. The preacher told me he loved me, told me God showed him we were meant to be together. Mary Beth's voice shook but didn't break. I believed him. I was grieving my mother and he took advantage of that. And when I told him I was pregnant, he disappeared, left town before sunrise without a word. The judge wrote something in his notebook. Did you report this to the sheriff? No, Your Honor. I was ashamed, and my father... She looked at Harlan with something between pity and contempt. My father said it was my fault, said I tempted him, that I deserved whatever happened. She did, Harlan insisted, walking around town flaunting herself. I was grieving my mother. Mary Beth's composure finally cracked. I was 22 years old and my mother had just died, and some man told me God loved me and I believed him. I made a mistake, yes, but I didn't deserve to be sold like livestock. Samuel started crying at the raised voices. Mary Beth automatically began rocking him, patting his back, murmuring soft comfort. The motion was so natural, so instinctive that even the railroad lawyer looked uncomfortable. Judge Dinger watched her calm the baby, then turned to Jonas. Mr. Rohr, why did you buy her? Because what her father was doing was wrong. Jonas's voice was quiet but firm. I came to town for supplies, found a crowd gathered around an auction block, saw Mary Beth standing there, pregnant and terrified while her own father sold her. I couldn't walk away from that. So you paid $5 and took her to your cabin. The judge consulted his notes. Some witnesses say she looked afraid of you. She was afraid, Jonas agreed. Any woman would be, but not of me specifically. She was afraid of everything that had just happened to her. Your Honor, the railroad lawyer interjected smoothly, Mr. Rohr has a history of violence. 2 years ago, his Shoshone wife died under mysterious circumstances on this very mountain. The body was never recovered. He claims an avalanche, but there's no proof. There's plenty of proof, Henry spoke up. I was there. I found him. You're his friend, the lawyer said dismissively. Hardly an objective witness. I'm also a Ute scout employed by the territorial government. Henry's voice was ice. And I brought 5 elders who witnessed the same thing I did. Their testimony is in your packet. Judge Dinger flipped through papers. I see that. Multiple sworn statements from Ute witnesses saying they found Mr. Rohr trying to dig through an avalanche site, that his hands were badly injured from the attempt, that weather records confirm a severe blizzard hit this area that day. He looked at the railroad lawyer. Seems like plenty of proof to me. Indian testimony, the lawyer began, is worth exactly as much as white testimony in my court, the judge interrupted coldly. You got a problem with that, take it up with the territorial governor. Now sit down and be quiet unless I ask you a direct question. The lawyer's face went red, but he stayed silent. Judge Dinger turned back to Mary Beth. Mrs. Rohr, I need you to be completely honest with me. Are you happy here? Mary Beth looked down at Samuel, then at Jonas standing protectively nearby, then around the small cabin that had become her home. Happy isn't the right word, Your Honor, she said slowly. I've been through too much these past months to call anything happy. But I'm safe here, respected, treated with dignity. She looked directly at the judge. Jonas gave me choice when my own father took it away. He never touched me without permission, never demanded anything from me. When I went into labor yesterday, he saved my life and my son's life. He turned the baby when it was positioned wrong, kept me from bleeding out, stayed with me through all of it. Yesterday, the judge's eyebrows shot up. You just gave birth yesterday. Yes, Your Honor. Samuel's not even a day old yet. Judge Dinger looked at Jonas with new respect. You delivered that baby? Yes, sir. Successfully by the look of it. That's no small feat. The judge made another note. The railroad's petition claims you're planning to claim the child as your own to strengthen your land rights. That true? Jonas was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. That baby's mother is my wife. That makes him my son, far as I'm concerned. Railroad's rights don't enter into it. But you're not the biological father. No, sir. But I'm the one who's gonna raise him. Teach him to hunt and trap and survive in these mountains. Make sure he grows up knowing he's loved and wanted. That's what makes a father not just blood. Mary Beth felt tears prick her eyes. Jonas had said it before, but hearing him say it to the judge, saying it officially made it real in a way it hadn't been before. Your Honor, the railroad lawyer tried again. Regardless of Mr. Rohr's intentions, the fact remains that this land is needed for public infrastructure. The railroad will bring jobs, commerce growth to this entire region. One man's homestead claim can't stand in the way of progress. Progress, Judge Dinger said the word like it tasted bad. Funny how progress always seems to benefit rich men while hurting poor folks. He looked at Harlan. Mr. Briggs, what's your stake in this? Why do you care if your daughter stays here or not? You sold her after all. Harlan shifted uncomfortably. I got rights to my grandchild. Do you now? The judge's voice was flat. Rights you forfeited when you sold his mother. He consulted his papers again. I also have reports that you've been meeting with railroad representatives. That money changed hands. Want to explain that that's private business, not when it's relevant to a land seizure case it's not. Judge Dinger leaned forward. You made a deal with the railroad, didn't you? They pay you to testify against your daughter and Mr. Rohr, and in exchange they give you a cut when they take this land. That about right? Harlan's silence was answer enough. Your Honor, the railroad lawyer said quickly, Mr. Briggs's financial arrangements are irrelevant to the core question of whether they're plenty relevant. The judge's voice hardened. They show motive for false testimony. They show conspiracy to defraud a legal landowner. He looked at Harlan with disgust. You really are a piece of work, Briggs. Selling your daughter wasn't enough. Had to try to profit from her a second time. She owes me, Harlan exploded. I raised her, fed her, put a roof over her head for 22 years. She owes me. You owed her protection, Mary Beth said quietly. You owed her love. You owed her the same loyalty you're demanding from her. But you gave her none of that. I gave you everything. You gave me fear. Mary Beth's voice was steady now, clear. After Mama died, all you gave me was fear and shame. You drank away her medicine money. You sold her wedding ring for whiskey. And when I needed you most, when I was pregnant and terrified and alone, you sold me to the first person who'd take me. She held Samuel closer. But Jonas didn't take me. He rescued me. And I'll spend the rest of my life grateful for that. Judge Dinger was writing rapidly in his notebook. When he finished, he looked up at the railroad lawyer. You got any actual evidence that Mrs. Roar's here unwillingly, besides her father's testimony, which I'm inclined to discount, given his financial interest?" The lawyer shuffled through his papers, clearly searching for something useful. "Your Honor, there are concerns about Mr. Roar's character. The circumstances of his first wife's death have been thoroughly investigated and explained." The judge cut him off. "Multiple credible witnesses, physical evidence, weather records. Unless you have new evidence suggesting those witnesses perjured themselves, well, no, but then move on." The lawyer tried a different approach. "Even if we accept that Mrs. Roar is here willingly, the fact remains that this land is needed for the railroad. We're prepared to offer fair compensation." "I'm not selling." Jonas's voice was flat. "Not for any price." "Mr. Roar, be reasonable." "I am being reasonable. This land is my home, my wife's home, my son's home. You want to run your railroad through here, you'll have to go around. The survey shows this is the only viable route through this section of mountain." "Then I guess you've got a problem." Jonas crossed his arms. "Because I'm not leaving." Judge Dinger held up a hand for silence. "Let me be clear about something. Eminent domain is a powerful tool, but it's not unlimited. The government can't just seize land because it's convenient or profitable. There has to be compelling public need, and the landowner has to be fairly compensated." "We're offering compensation," the lawyer started, "at about 30 cents on the dollar, according to my research." The judge looked at his notes. "This property, with its timber rights, water access, and strategic location, is worth at least $2,000. You're offering $600. That's not fair compensation. That's theft with legal paperwork." The lawyer's expression tightened. "Your Honor, the railroad has considerable political influence." "Are you threatening me?" Judge Dinger's voice went dangerously quiet. "Because I've been on this bench for 20 years and I've outlasted 3 territorial governors and more crooked lawyers than I can count. You think your railroad bosses scare me? I'm simply pointing out the realities. Here's a reality for you." The judge stood his considerable height, making the cabin seem even smaller. "I'm ruling in favor of the Roars. The marriage is valid. Mrs. Roar is here of her own free will. Mr. Roar's land claim is legal and predates your railroad's interest by 5 years. The eminent domain petition is denied. Your Honor." The lawyer's composure finally cracked. "You can't." "I just did. The railroad wants this route they can purchase adjoining land and go around. Or they can offer Mr. Roar actual fair value and see if he's interested in selling. But they can't force him out based on trumped-up charges and a corrupt witness." He glared at Harlan. "Speaking of which, Mr. Briggs, I'm fining you $500 for perjury and conspiracy to defraud. You don't pay within 30 days, you'll spend 6 months in the territorial prison." Harlan went white. "I don't have $500. Should have thought of that before you sold your daughter." The judge turned to the lawyer. "You tell your railroad bosses this case is closed. They want to appeal, they can take it to the Territorial Supreme Court. But I'll be sending my full report, including documentation of their attempts to bribe witnesses and coerce testimony. I don't think that'll go well for them." The lawyer gathered his papers with shaken hands, clearly trying to maintain some dignity. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is." Judge Dinger's voice was final. "Get out of my sight before I find you in contempt." The lawyer left quickly, Harlan stumbling after him. Through the window, Mary Beth watched them mount their horses and ride away her father, looking smaller and more pathetic with every step. Judge Dinger sat back down suddenly, looking tired. "I apologize for the intrusion, Mrs. Rohr, especially given your condition, but I needed to see this situation with my own eyes." "Thank you, Your Honor." Mary Beth's voice was thick with relief. "Thank you for listening. I'm paid to listen, and to recognize the truth when I hear it." He looked at Jonas. "You got a good woman there, Mr. Rohr, and from what I've seen, she's got a good man. Don't waste that." "No, sir, I won't." The judge stood preparing to leave. Henry moved to help him gather his things. "One more thing," Judge Dinger said at the door. "That baby of yours, Samuel, was it?" "Yes, sir," Mary Beth said. "He's lucky to have parents who fought for him before he was even a day old. You raise him right, teach him the difference between justice and law. God knows we need more people who understand that difference." He settled his hat on his head. "Good luck to all of you." After the judge and Henry left the cabin, fell into silence. Mary Beth stood holding Samuel Jonas beside her, both of them too overwhelmed to speak. Finally, Jonas let out a long breath. "We won. We won," Mary Beth repeated like she needed to hear it out loud to believe it. "Your father's really gone. The railroad's really gone." Jonas turned to face her. "It's over. It's over," Mary Beth agreed. Then, without thinking, she leaned into him, resting her head against his chest. Samuel was nestled between them. Jonas's arms came around them both, careful and tentative at first, then stronger. "I've got you," he whispered. "Both of you, I've got you." They stood like that for a long time, a makeshift family, held together by circumstance and choice and something that was starting to feel like love. Samuel stirred and made a small sound. Mary Beth pulled back reluctantly. "He's hungry again." "I'll make us something to eat while you feed him." Jonas moved to the stove, falling back into the comfortable routines they'd developed. "You must be starving." Mary Beth settled into the chair, arranging Samuel to nurse. Her body ached everywhere, exhaustion pulling at her, but she'd never felt more awake, more alive. "Jonas," she said as he worked. "Yeah? What you said to the judge about Samuel being your son, did you mean it?" Jonas paused in his work, then turned to face her fully. "Every word, if you'll let me. I know I can't replace his real father. You are his real father." Mary Beth's voice was firm. "Blood doesn't make family. Love does. Choice does. And you chose us. You chose me too," Jonas pointed out. "Could have left in spring. Could have asked Henry to take you somewhere else, but you stayed." "I stayed because there's nowhere else I'd rather be." Mary Beth looked around the small cabin. "This is home now. Your home." Jonas came to kneel beside the chair, eye level with her and Samuel. "I loved Sarah. I'll always love Sarah, but she'd want me to be happy again, to live, not just survive." He reached out and gently touched Samuel's head. "And you both make me happy. Make me want to live again." "Then live with us," Mary Beth said softly, "not just as my protector or Samuel's guardian, but as my husband. For real, in every way." Jonas searched her face. "You sure? Because once we do this, once we make it real, there's no going back." "I don't want to go back. I only want to go forward." She smiled. "With you." Jonas stood and leaned down, pressing his lips to her forehead in a gesture so tender it made her eyes burn. "Then forward it is." Samuel finished eating, and Mary Beth burped him against her shoulder. Jonas watched them with an expression of wonder, like he couldn't quite believe this was his life now. "I never thought I'd have this again," he admitted quietly. "A family, a reason to plan for tomorrow instead of just surviving today. Now you have both." Mary Beth stood carefully, every muscle protesting. "And I'm going to need you to take him for a minute, because I desperately need to use the outhouse." Jonas took Samuel with practiced ease, now cradling the tiny baby against his broad chest. Samuel looked impossibly small in his arms, but completely safe. When Mary Beth returned, Jonas was sitting by the fire, talking softly to Samuel. "Your mama's the bravest person I ever met," he was saying. "Braver than me, braver than anyone. She stood up to her father, stood up to the railroad, stood up to a whole town. And yesterday she brought you into this world even when it was hard and scary. You're lucky to have her as your mama." Mary Beth's throat tightened. She stood in the doorway listening. "And I'm going to do my best to be the father you deserve," Jonas continued. "Might not always get it right. Probably won't if I'm being honest. But I'll love you and protect you and teach you everything I know. And when you're old enough to understand, I'll tell you the truth about how you came to be. About the preacher who left and the mountain man who stayed. And I'll let you decide what that means." "He'll decide you're his father," Mary Beth said, stepping into the room. "Because you will be, in every way that matters." Jonas looked up, and for the first time since she'd met him, he was smiling, really smiling. The kind of smile that transformed his entire face, making him look years younger. "Come here," he said, and Mary Beth went to him, settling on the floor beside his chair. They sat together by the fire, passing Samuel back and forth, talking quietly about everything and nothing. The future they'd build. The repairs the cabin needed before real winter hit. What they'd plant in spring. How they'd teach Samuel to walk, to talk, to survive in these mountains. They talked until the fire burned low and exhaustion finally won. Jonas helped Mary Beth to bed, tucked the furs around her, and Samuel then settled on his pallet by the fire like always. "Jonas," Mary Beth called into the darkness. "Yeah, you don't have to sleep by the fire anymore, not if you don't want to." Silence for a long moment. Then the sound of Jonas standing, crossing the floor. He climbed carefully onto the other side of the bed, staying above the covers, giving her space. "Is this okay?" he asked. "It's perfect." They lay there in the darkness, Samuel between them, 3 hearts beating in the quiet cabin. Outside, wind howled through the pines and snow began to fall again. Winter was coming in hard like it always did in these mountains. But inside, warmth. Inside, safety. Inside, the beginning of something new. Mary Beth reached across Samuel and found Jonas's hand. His fingers closed around hers, scarred and strong and steady. "Thank you," she whispered one more time. "Thank you," Jonas whispered back. And in the darkness, with her newborn son sleeping peacefully and her husband's hand in hers, Mary Beth finally understood something important. She hadn't been sold that day in Silverton. She'd been set free, free from her father's cruelty, free from shame and fear, free to build the life she chose with the people she chose. The mountain that had once seemed like exile now felt like sanctuary. The man everyone called a murderer had turned out to be the gentlest soul she'd ever known, and the baby everyone said was a burden had become the greatest gift of her life. Sometimes mercy comes from unexpected places. Sometimes the people society rejects turn out to be the most worthy of love. Sometimes what looks like an ending is really a beginning. And sometimes when the world tries to sell you for $5 a mountain man pays the price and gives you something priceless in return. your dignity, your choice, your life. Spring would come eventually, the passes would thaw, Judge Dinger's ruling would stand. The railroad would go around and her father would face his consequences. Henry would visit with news and friendship. The Ute elders would come to bless Samuel in their traditional way, welcoming him into the extended family that had claimed Jonas as one of their own. But all of that was tomorrow. All of that was the future. Tonight there was just this, a family made not by blood or law, but by choice and courage and love. And that was enough. That was everything. Mary Beth closed her eyes and let sleep take her, safe in the knowledge that when she woke, Jonas would still be there. Samuel would still be breathing softly between them. The cabin would still be standing strong against the winter wind. They had fought for this. They had earned this. And no one, not her father, not the railroad, not anyone could ever take it away. In the end, mercy had triumphed over cruelty. Love had defeated hate. And a pregnant woman sold on an auction block had found something worth more than all the gold in Colorado. She had found home.